Hi, welcome back this week. You're with Burleigh County. This is Chandra Zeman-Belinsky. I'm the Family and Consumer Sciences Agent. I'm joined here on Extension Connection by Ashley Stegman. She's our Agriculture and Natural Resources Agent. We're going to bring actually quite a few subjects to you today. It's going to be all over the place.
It is, and we have a lot of good information that we are going to be sharing with our listeners today. Now, there's a few things you might be noticing if you're out and about. One, the wind.
Yes.
I know today is kind of a bad hair day for me, so, a baseball cap is okay to wear, especially on these days here. One thing that I have been hearing, and I actually did get an email. We are concerned about that potential frost.
Okay,
that's coming.
Like what, in the next couple days or the weekend?
It looks like Thursday and Friday, those temperatures at night are going to dip down. There is a potential for a frost, but don't be alarmed. I know a lot of people with the nice weather. We've been very motivated to get in our gardens and out in our lawns, our landscapes. Most of what we have planted will be okay. We shouldn't have a hard freeze. That's the thing, is if we have a hard freeze, that can be detrimental. But if we do drop down below 32 degrees, it will be okay. It's just hopefully we don't stay below 32 degrees for a long extended time period. What happens when we have that late spring frost that can damage some of our crops or even some of those early season garden plants that we might put out, that the temperature below 32 degrees will cause water in that plant cells to freeze, which will result in an ice crystal. And when then it warms up, what happens to that ice crystal?
Melts.
It melts. It bursts.
Yeah.
So it kills the cells.
Right.
It damages that cell membrane that's very juvenile. That's very early in its development.
Right.
And so that's really what's happening when we do see a spring late frost. And we talk about late frost. Our typical frost, last frost. What do you think, Chandra?
Well, I'm thinking, sometime in May. Would it probably end of May?
It's actually May 15th.
Okay, mid-May.
So May 15th is coming up this Sunday.
Yeah.
And so it's not
Absolutely.
It's not strange for us to have a late frost. But like I said, this is not going to be a hard freeze. This isn't going to be anything that's going to really hinder the growth of our plants. So, if you are worried and you have a few of those early season crops, if you have, if you have some potatoes or beets or radishes, lettuce even, if you have some of those in the ground and you're just barely starting to see them emerge, they should be okay because they are close enough to the ground. And the other thing, if you're worried about them, you can always put a tarp or a blanket over them. Might make you feel better.
Right.
Tuck them in at night.
Right.
And so the same thing goes for our crops. A lot of our crops are able to handle light frosts or light freezes. Our cereal grains, what will happen if we do have a frost that takes that is there for more hours, that lasts a little bit longer, we will see loose leaf loss, which we don't have any leaf really at this point of the stage right now. But again, what's really happening is the water within that plant is crystallizing, and when that temperature then goes above 32 degrees and starts to warm up again, it bursts, and so it damages that very new cell membrane. So there are certain crops that you don't have to really worry about. Corn, for one, for some of our farmers that have their corn in already, that's a pretty hardy one. It's got to stay cold for a long time for corn to really be damaged. Soybean, now that one, if you have some soybeans out there and you're seeing a little germination already, a little growth, those are the ones that are a little more sensitive to those cold temperatures. Our cereal grains, they can handle it. They are kind of made for North Dakota, made for our region, and so they're able to handle it pretty pretty well. I know Chandra and I, just as we were driving over, we were kind of talking about our travels past the weekend. And I know I headed back home to Northwest Iowa. And I have to say, I think we have more crops up here, or more field work done up here than they would down where my family's from. They were busy in the field putting corn and soybeans in, but it's pretty wet down there, and so we could definitely. I know. We don't always want that water or that mud and that muck, but it is something that we need to get those plants growing and those crops growing for us. And so really the next couple of days looks a little cold and windy.
Yeah, windy.
So hopefully we'll see some sun.
Right. Well, now, I think it's interesting when you're talking about the plants, then the crops that can handle the cold versus those that can't, because those of you that don't know, my background is food science, and I have, the first time I ever worked in the food science industry, somebody said, he had a PhD, he was my boss, and he said, if you understand water and water activity in food, you understand food science. And so the point is, you need to know how much natural innate water is in something. Beans have more water than the cereal grains that you said that were a little bit more hardy. So that makes sense, because you're saying that as the water crystallizes in the cells, it bursts, and then, So that is interesting. Makes sense.
Yeah.
It all is a full circle.
It does all go full circle. And, even talking about some of those other minor crops, our sunflowers.
Right.
They can really withstand temperatures in 25 to 26 degree for
lower.
Short periods.
Okay.
And so, they do handle fairly well. Flax is susceptible when it's first coming out of the ground.
Okay.
And so that's one. It will tolerate temperatures about 28 degrees. Again, not for a long time. Alfalfa will be damaged by temperatures in the mid-20s. And so for some individuals that might have alfalfa fields, those cold temperatures will definitely hurt that stand growing.
Okay. Yep. All right. Well, we'll be back after the break with more with Burley County Extension Connection.
Right now, 46.
Super Talk 1270, home of the Bismarck Bobcats and high school sports. Listen online or anywhere on the Radio Pub app. Super Talk 1270.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Extension Connection. You have Burley County with you this week here. This is Chandra Zeman-Belinsky. I'm the Family and Consumer Sciences Agent, joined by Ashley Stegman. She's the Agriculture and Natural Resources Agent.
Yep. And just before the break, we were talking about kind of our weather and that that frost that kind of lingers out there that might be hitting parts or regions of North Dakota the next couple days here. Like I said, with a lot of our field crops or even our garden stuff, it really, if we dip down into the temperatures below 32 degrees, it's going to be okay. It's just the length of time that we're below 32 degrees. That's where the big concern is. And so as long as maybe we dip down to 28 degrees for an hour overnight and we get warm weather again, we'll be okay. And, talking about this kind of cool, cold, windy weather, looking forward to next week and our forecast, looks like we should be getting warm again. And I know I'm looking forward to the summer and warm temperatures. And especially one thing that we often forget about, and maybe we don't do early enough even in the season, when that sun comes out, we just all want to soak it up, and we want to utilize all that warmth. I think back to even being on the farm. That was a lovely time to have that first warm sunshine on you. And I know, just thinking back about my parents, my dad, my grandpa, being out there on the open cab tractor, and one thing. We always would joke, especially Sunday morning when they'd get dressed in their best to go to church, they'd always have a farmer's tan. And it never failed. You could see it. It was almost like black. It was black against white. It was just so
Huge contrast.
noticeable. And, the thing was they didn't care. And the other thing was, all the other farmers at church had the same thing. So they were all in it together. Right. So it was just kind of something they wore. But I know you have some information on how to handle that.
Well, and you have a good point there, because it seems like kind of the norm around certain groups of people. And then what happens is we learn after a lifetime, so think our grandparents again now, and the spots that they've had to have, cut off their body, potential squamous cells, the not quite yet melanoma level skin cancer, but they are definitely basal and squamous cells are much more serious when it comes to irregularities. So you usually have to get rid of them early. Now, let's talk about prevention, because that's really the key instead of having to react to something. And actually, everybody, the month of May is Sun Protection Month. So that's why we wanted to end a little bit after talking about our crops with sun safety. So there's actually 5 little fundamentals. We'll tell you 4 fundamentals. Slip, slop, slap, seek is what they stand for. And so we're talking about protecting our skin from the sun. Actually, you want to limit your exposure if you can from the hours of 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. because that's the peak hours of the sun and when the rays are most damaging. So if you're not able to, what we're saying is to slip on some protective clothing. Slop on an SPF of, do you have any idea what SPF we recommend, Ashley, sunscreen?
Ooh, I want to say like 50.
Okay, well, it's actually 30.
Oh.
And 15's okay too, but the standard is
they even
SPF
make
30.
50?
They do. I use 50 a lot.
Okay, good.
I actually prefer 50.
Okay.
So, but SPF 30, and you want to put it on about every 2 hours. So even though you've put it on your body, it can wear off, especially when you're sweating.
So the excuse I remember so often at the pool, well, I put it on at the beginning. Isn't that good enough?
Right.
That's
well,
not good
it's
enough
not
anymore?
necessarily. And especially when you're at the pool, you should actually do it about every break, which is about every hour. Because, again, you're slowing it off and you're sweating and it's wet. And actually, here's something else. How far in advance should you put sunscreen on before you go outside, time-wise?
Oh, boy. I know before you walk out the door.
Okay,
For
that's
sure.
usually what people say. It's actually, the standard is a half hour before
really?
you go outside. The chemistry of the product's got to work in. And so it's not an immediate coverage. At least you're able to get it on, but ideally, if you put it on, then you get the kids' shoes on and maybe grab the bag and everything. By that time, it'll be about a half hour.
Yeah.
So maybe start with that during your routine. Here's something that was really enlightening. Before I joined Extension, I did not realize that actually no tan is a safe tan. So any color means that your body's reacting and going through its safety mechanism. So it's trying to tint your skin because it sees that there's extra exposure. So that's kind of the standard according to the Cancer Coalition.
Okay.
No tan is a safe tan. So ultraviolet rays are the reason why your skin changes color, and the melatonin in it actually is what changes. So that's just your body's response. And so it's actually the number one cause of skin cancer.
Okay.
is getting one single sunburn can significantly increase your chances. So, hey, everybody, put your sunscreen on, SPF 30, about a half hour before you go outside, and take the bottle with you. If you've done it once and you're going to be out in the field for 8 hours, you need to do it a couple of, more times. Put it in the cab of the tractor or wherever you can, your lunchbox.
Definitely. Now, one thing, maybe our sun rays aren't so strong right now, but I know with this wind, my husband was just out, and he came home yesterday, back from the field, and he just had the reddest cheeks, and I'm guessing that he says it's a wind burn.
Yeah.
Now, is there anything you can do for that?
Right. You have to protect your tissue, your skin. And so that's another reason to use a wide-brimmed hat if you can.
Okay.
And sometimes you can't totally prevent it from, the tip of your nose and your cheeks, but they do work together, I'm saying sun and wind, to damage your skin. And so
So maybe the sun's not out, but your skin is being harmed by the wind,
Right.
and maybe using some type of SPF with maybe that 15
Right.
would be something that at least
there's some
cools
moisture.
your skin or
Yeah,
something.
because the wind is drying out your skin. Okay, and so it's chapping it, and there's a little moisture there from this, so it definitely helps. Also, if you put on, like I said, a large brimmed hat and then some sunglasses.
Okay.
So, and if you can, seek shade and shelter. I mean, obviously, if you're working, that's not always an option. But I can tell you that my husband and I, last year when we had a little one, we did get a little sunshade for the boat, and we didn't bother to do that before, even for ourselves, which we probably should have. It's easy to, there's always room for improvement, even in yourself, if you're even giving the message. So.
Oh yeah, I know our backpack, we have kind of a kid carrier since we like to do a lot of hiking. That even has a sunshade awning
over the top
that you can pull right over. So I even think about sunscreen for my young kiddos, and once we had a few nice days there, I moved that sunscreen next to the door. That way they get it on right before they put their shoes on, or when they put their shoes on, and we can go then. But from what you're saying here, we need to maybe change up our routine and put that sunscreen on a little bit earlier.
Yeah, that's true. And when you're saying hiking and different things, you guys like to go out and walk. I actually really appreciate that lately at some of the sports shows. I've seen sun safety booths there.
Okay.
So different companies are marketing their sun safety products that are safe for children, non-comedogenic, won't clog your pores and all these things. So there's definitely some options. So watch for those too when you're out there.
Yeah, that sounds great. Now we just need to wait for that sun to come out again and warm us all up.
That's true. Well, let me give you a heads up of what we're going to talk about after the break, and then we're going to take a quick break here. So after this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about a subject that isn't easy to talk about, which is, if you know somebody who's distressed or suffering from a little bit of mental health or depression and,
anxiety even.
That's right. We're not clinicians here, but we have some options for you as you're working with those you love and those who you even see on Facebook sometimes that might be concerned about what they're going through. And then we'll give you a recap of some programming we have coming up. So right after the break.
Right now, 46.
Here's Sean Hannity, weekday afternoons on Super Talk 1270.
Hi there. Welcome back, everybody. You're with Burleigh County and the Extension Connection this week. I'm Chandra Zeman-Belinsky, the Family and Consumer Sciences Agent, joined by Ashley Stegman, Agriculture and Natural Resources Agent. And now the second portion of the show here, we are going to delve into a subject that's not always comfortable to talk about, and maybe that's why we don't talk about it often enough. We're going to talk about how to help people who are stressed out, who are distressed. And, I really we have a publication here. Those of you who don't know about publications from NDSU Extension, they're always numbered. So what you can do is use your search engine out there, if it's Google or Bing.com, and you can type in NDSU Extension. We like you to use our Burleigh County Extension site. And then on the top right-hand side, there's always this magnifying glass search option, and you can find any of our publications. This one is called, and it's numbered FS, as in Foxtrot Sierra, FS 1805, Responding to Distressed People. Simple as that. Distressed, kind of in general. We're not clinicians, but we are people who want to help you if you have loved ones or friends or anybody that you know who is struggling with stress.
I'm sure many of our listeners have probably said, maybe within the last week or within the last month that you're stressed, or maybe your spouse is stressed.
Absolutely.
I can think of a lot of producers especially in our ag fields that might be feeling kind of stressed out right now, with the prices and all the variabilities with cropping and ranching. There's a lot of ups and downs in the market, and to weather them out, that can be very stressful.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes you need help. Sometimes somebody needs your help. You can be on both sides of this. And, so let's start with a couple statistics here. So back in May of 2015, not very long ago, a year ago, which is actually, when you consider studies, pretty recent.
Very recent.
Yeah. The public health, Bismarck-Burley Public Health, was required to do their every 3-year assessment. And they did theirs in conjunction with Sanford as well as CHI St. Alexius. So everybody got together and we did one nice felt swoop of a community health needs assessment. And there was, as you can imagine, a mental health element there that came out of it. And so right here in the heart of our communities, Bismarck and Mandan specifically now, we had about 10 to, anywhere from 7 to 12%. So about 10% of respondents who took the health assessment, and it was actually kind of lengthy, they were very thorough with it, said that they're struggling with some type of mental health in the last 30 days, to the point in which sometimes they were physically and mentally not able to do their usual activities. So a good 10% of our population. Now, 10% might not sound like a lot, but when you're considering that, Burley County offhand has about 88,000 people who, as a population, that's a good 9,000 people, 8,000 people that are struggling. Put 8,000 people in a room, that's a lot of people. Every person matters here. And so, like we said, it might, that 10% of the people right now are saying, hey, we need help. And who knows the demographics specifically that we reached. We tried to be as thorough as possible. NDSU is very particular about the way that we gather information. And, there were free computers at the library for anybody to walk up and take this. There were mailings, there were emails, there were all kinds of methods to gather information. So for the most part, we hope it's an even demographic. Excuse me, there was only... And that is only one statistic. Actually, back in 2015, NDSU Extension did what we called community forums. We pulled 327 participants, is exactly what it was, across 11 different sites within the state. We talked about subjects that pertain to agriculture, energy, natural resources, stuff that Ashley's an expert in. And then also the other subjects were children, families, and communities. And out of that, we also saw a concern about mental health. Okay.
Oh, yes.
So, hey, I think we plugged enough that this is a subject that pertains to everybody. And if it doesn't, you might be surprised. You'll probably find somebody.
And you may not feel like it applies to you right now.
Right.
But I would be curious to know the stats, to know, thinking about individuals, and even in whatever situation or work environment you are in. I'm sure there's a point where you do feel stressed out, where you do feel overwhelmed, or a sense of anxiety that you can't handle. And so this is something kind of a food for thought. You might not feel it now, but remember, if you start to have these feelings, there are people out there. There is information to assist with this that really can better you.
Right. So actually, let's get into it. I'm not going to wait until the end of the show to give the meat and potatoes right now. Sometimes I like to make everybody hold on, but I tell you what, I hope to repeat this at least 3 times in the next half hour here. So if there is somebody who is in imminent danger, there is a clear need for intervention, somebody's in trouble. Okay. Most of us know you call what 3-digit number? 911. 911. I mean, if somebody is in significant trouble, unfortunately, suicide is something that we struggle with. And I know I have a couple girlfriends actually who lost sisters to suicide. And I mean, I'm talking that was... They dialed 911. Both of their stories include that, okay? And even if it's not to that level, if somebody's just hurting, if there is danger or a clear sign of somebody hurting, 911 is your number. Okay, now what do you do for the cases in between, my friends? I mean, I feel like, okay, and we definitely have a lot of stress in my house. My husband's a criminal lawyer. He deals with some difficult subjects. And even if you don't have a criminal lawyer in your house, I mean, a farmer, or you have especially people who run their own business and aren't sure, where their next paycheck might come from or something. I mean, there's all kinds of stressors out there. What do you do for the in-betweens? Even if it's just, well, my child isn't quite acting correctly in the classroom, I'm not sure what to do. Okay, well, your first step, if you don't know what to do, we actually have a phone number in our country, which is wonderful. That is, you would dial 211. It's called First Link. Okay, so you, instead of 911, you would, for a 24-hour helpline for things like, and there's actually 4 bullets, I'll read them out, you would dial 211. So if you need emotional support, or if you think you need some type of health assessment, if there's a needs assessment that you want to take, they offer this. If you simply just need information or a referral to, let's say, marriage counseling, they will do that. I actually just got off the phone with this 211 number. I wanted to try it out before I referred you. I was referred to this number by our experts at NDSU Extension, as well as a Representative Hogan, who champions our state for this effort. And she said, have people dial 211. She was right. I was very impressed with the way that they handled it. And I use that example of, in this case, marriage counseling, because I saw a good friend this morning, and she was going through some trouble. So, suicide support services. Absolutely. So this is still your suicide hotline if you need it. Volunteer opportunities is the last thing. So if your children are maybe 14 years old, aren't quite ready to work, maybe 13 years old, but you need to get them involved in something that'll help your community, hey, this is an opportunity. Maybe they can help make our community better by supporting whatever these guys need to do. So First Link is dialing 211. They can refer you to all kinds of things. Now, there is a 24-hour suicide lifeline, and that number is 1-800-273-TALK. So that's 8255 TALK. And then there's also resources on the website. But I want to elaborate a little bit here now on the publication that I was referencing earlier. Now, I talked about it was FS 1805. This one is called Responding to Distressed People again. Okay, so you have a person who is experiencing distress. And we keep that pretty general by design. We're not saying it's specifically diagnosed anxiety or true depression. Some people shy away from that. Hey, I'm stressed out right now. It might be a short period of time. Okay, so we don't want to label somebody. But the best thing you could really do, I would say, is to start talking about it, right? I mean, because this is the kind of thing you don't want to talk about.
Yep.
So start talking about it. It's okay to do that. And I almost always find that when I start telling my couple stories that I've got about stress and being distressed, people really come out of the woodwork for it. And I think they really respect that about other people who are able to share. So let's talk about some signs of distress. Okay, so we see signs of distress can include nervousness, a little bit of agitation and irritability, and maybe this is normal, but some people really twitch when they really get nervous, and so maybe for that, and you especially want to know the people that you're trying to watch, what's normal and what's in addition to normal with them. Infrequent class or work attendance, I'm thinking teenagers now especially, this absolutely can happen. Excessive crying or sleeping. Changes in routine behavior, which is another thing, an example about nervousness and the twitching. Changes in personal or work relationships. All of a sudden, they no longer call their best friend. That's absolutely. Deterioration of hygiene. So this was a person who really significantly, did their hair every day or wanted to make sure they looked great with their outfit or whatever, and they no longer are doing that. And this actually can go for aging people as well. People who are no longer physically capable, and it's depressing them. They don't want to get in the shower. Okay, a couple more things and we'll take a break. Bursts of anger and blaming, fearfulness, undue aggressive and abrasive behavior, Avoidance or withdrawal, significant withdrawal. You haven't heard from somebody in a while. And then we can get into the gambling, alcohol, drug abuse, and smoking. Okay, well, after the break, we'll continue with our subject about distress.
Right now, it's 52.
Dave Ramsey is heard here. Super Talk 1270.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Extension Connection. You're joined here this week by Burleigh County. My name is Chandra Zeman-Belinsky, and I'm the Family and Consumer Sciences Agent, joined here by Ashley Stegman, the Ag and Natural Resources Agent.
Yep.
And we're talking about this segment of the show about a subject that isn't always easy to talk about, dealing with stress and distressed people. And for the most part, we're talking here about adults. There is a very special sector about children as well and youth. We're focusing on adults, and it could even be the workplace today. But tell you what, let's make sure that we know, if you're just joining us, you know what to do if you have somebody who is extremely stressed, and actually there could even be some danger here. It's almost like maybe you're on the phone with them. It's like they can't get control emotionally. You think that there might be a major problem. Sometimes there's substance abuse involved. Maybe they're really abusing the alcohol on the other end of the phone, and there might be some imminent danger. What do you do when there's a clear sign of imminent danger? You dial 911, okay? Now, pretty much anything in between, if you just need to talk, or if you just need a referral to, let's say, marriage counseling, the example I used earlier, let's say your child is acting out in school and you're not even sure if you want to go to the school to ask them, you are able to dial 211, which is a national helpline. It's a 24-hour helpline funded in part by United Way, actually, and that's by FirstLink, okay? So you can check out their website at www.myfirstlink.org. And always dial 211. I dialed 211 about a couple hours ago to make sure that everything was working perfectly, and they are fantastic on the other end of the phone. You don't feel like you're taking up a bunch of their time. I didn't want to clog the phones. I didn't stay on very long, but I asked them for a couple referrals for the marriage counseling example, and they performed perfectly. They gave us what was local here and where I wanted to go. Okay, so we talked before the break a little bit about a person who's experiencing distress and some of those signs. Okay, so, the person could, the big thing is they're changing from what you knew before. Okay.
I actually just heard on the radio this morning, and I can't remember which station or what talk show host talked about it.
Yeah.
But they had and this is a national show, and they had received something, I believe it was on like their Twitter account, and it was an old acquaintance from back when. Yeah. And they said, you've changed so much. You're not the same individual that I knew 10 years ago. And, this talk show host was a little miffed by it and said, well, no, I'm not like that person. You're not the same as you were 10 years ago. But, those relationships that you have with individuals, you should know them well enough to know what's not the norm.
I like that example, because you don't need to be around somebody for, monthly or daily or something. You can pick up kind of where you left off and trust your instincts on that. That's a good example. So then, some warning signs. So you're thinking, well, maybe you need to express a concern here. An example might be, especially if you're a senior and you go to coffee with your buddies a lot. I say senior because usually that's people who are retired. It's usually not the people who have to go to an 8-to-5 job. But I can see how my grandparents' friends, there was one guy who stopped coming to coffee. He just, and they would play cards, and it was just not normal for him to skip out. That would be a warning sign.
Yep.
Okay? And it's okay then to express your concern to that distressed person. So you could say something like, I've noticed you're not coming to coffee. It's been a long time since we've seen you. I'm concerned about you. Usually you want to add an emotion that you genuinely feel about the situation. You definitely want to go into empathic listening once they answer that question. Empathic listening usually means that you are assigning, you listen. You don't immediately want to become the counselor and try to fix it. So you don't have to have an answer. and you reflect the feelings that you hear them saying in your own words. Okay, so if they say, well, I'm not into it anymore. And if that's all they give you, I could say something like, I don't know, it sounds like you're a little down. I would like to see you. I miss you there. Maybe it would entice some conversation. Just some examples. So you would reflect, it sounds like you're sad. You're missing out on something, or whatever the emotion is that you're picking up on. Want to give you a couple more warning signs here now. So you're worried about the person's safety or something. Maybe there's a warning sign here. Even if it's not safety, I would say, because, we've got a couple things. We've got a lot of veterans in my family, and it just so happens to be some of our post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety revolves around service to our country. And, it doesn't have to, though. I mean, an example, I have seen a therapist before for my service connected, and I'm still in the Army Reserve. And this therapist said he saw people who owned a flower shop in a small town in North Dakota, and the reason why they were stressed is because all of their friends seemed to be passing away within that year's time, and they always had to provide the flowers for it. It was extremely heart-wrenching and distressful for this particular person. Another example could be, I really think of the paramedics. So if you think you might not be in this demographic, my mom and dad were driving through Fort Berthold for some work that they were doing. There's a lot of construction going on over there, and they were the first ones on an accident scene. Now, that actually could create some PTSD, some post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is defined, and again, I'm not a clinician, but it was defined so eloquently by a psychologist for me. And he said it is when your logical memory, the logical side of your brain now, which is usually your left-hand side, your logical side of your brain doesn't forget that you've seen a black and white image. Okay, you can't wipe that image out of your mind. It's your image. It's your right-hand side of your brain, your sensitive, emotional side, which is also just as wonderful, has the emotion that is tied to that logical memory. And so there are ways to treat that. There are ways to reset your logical memories so that your emotions don't drag you down. So, and sometimes it's not just a mental picture. It truly could be chemical, my friends. Okay, so here's the big thing. If there isn't an imminent danger, if there is, you're calling 911. If there isn't, and you're not sure, stay with that person. Stay with that person if you're just not sure. And don't assume that offhand. If you think there's an inclination, go with your gut. And if there is no imminent danger, just listen. That's the best advice we can give you. Listen and provide support. Don't become the therapist or counselor.
And with that, Chandra, I know from, experience with some family members, that's really the thing is, listening with with empathetic ears.
Right.
You are not the therapist. You
right.
are not the one that has the answers. And to listen without judgment.
Okay.
That is something that I've learned when dealing with family members is it's very important. They just need to express how they're feeling and know that they can confide in you. They don't want to have judgment thrown at them.
Yes.
Because if you start to get into that situation, they're not going to confide in you anymore.
Right.
And you're there to help them.
Right.
So remember to, keep being that active listener and not that active fixer.
Right. That's exactly right. I love that. And, if you're not sure what to do, keep asking clarifying questions, and you can make plans to check back in with somebody. being non-judgmental is important, and don't try to make it, they teach you this in parenting classes too, so the youth piece, don't try to make it about, hey, is it my fault? Just be there. That's the best thing you can do. So try to get this person through whatever it is they're trying to get through at that moment. Okay, well, we wanted to finish up just reminding you it's Sun Safety Month, so put on your sunscreen. Make sure you reapply SPF 30 every couple hours. We wanted to talk a little bit about a couple programs coming up here. I'm going to be at the Bismarck Senior Center talking about how to nourish your bodies. It could be your immune system, it could be your eyes, it could be your skin. This month we're going to talk about skin and eating to better these systems within your body. I'm going to be at the Senior Center from 10 to 11 on the 19th of May, and we're actually going to do this for an entire year, every third Thursday. So these classes are free. That's the big thing. You don't even have to register for this one. And then we do have one exciting program coming up in September. I want you to know about it now, because if you go to get your blood sugar checked at the doctor, sometimes there's actually a pre-diabetic category there. So you don't quite need insulin, but your blood sugar is too high. We're going to start a pre-diabetic program. It's called Diabetes Prevention, the 13th of September. All right, well, thanks for joining us this week.